Good evening, everyone. How are we doing this evening? So, again, once in a blue moon, I will just get on here on the stream on a Friday night and talk about some of the topics that I've seen through the week, just to give my own personal take on it. Not that anyone maybe cares, but hey, you know what? I've got this live stream. I'm going to use it, and I continue. Generally Tuesday nights, Brandon and I are here, but on Friday night, sometimes I just go solo and describe or talk about how we spread more freedom um, here in the state of Missouri, and just think about things from a freedom orientation, a freedom orientation, a freedom perspective, a liberty perspective, and so I want to jump right into this, right? Because um, first of all, we have the Southern Poverty Law Center, who, that was recently indicted. Let me pull up this article here real quick so everyone can see it on the screen. Now, this does come from the DOJ's website. Okay, so I'm taking everything with kind of a grain of salt, but also it's an interesting development, right? Because I think most of us in the liberty movement, right, the ones who don't want big government, we don't want to vote for big government, people, Republican, Democrat, whatever. Um, but this is an interesting development. So, federal grand jury charges Southern Poverty Law Center for wire fraud, false statements, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. So, on this site, it's saying between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly funneled more than $3 million in donated funds to individuals who were associated with various violent extremist groups, including the KKK, Aryan Nation, and National Socialist Party of America. So, a grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama today, this is from April 21st, by the way, uh, returned an indictment charging the SPLC with 11 counts of wire fraud, false statements to a federally insured bank, and conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Alabama Northern Division filed two forfeiture actions to recover alleged proceeds of the organization's fraud scheme. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation investigated this case with assistance from the IRS criminal investigation. The SPLC is manufacturing racism to justify its existence, said Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Using donor money to allegedly profit off Klansmen cannot go unchecked. This Department of Justice will hold the SPLC and every other fraudulent organization operating with the same deceptive playbook accountable. No entity is above the law. The SPLC allegedly engaged in a massive fraud operation to deceive their donors, enrich themselves, and hide their deceptive operations from the public. They lied to their donors, vowing to dismantle violent extremist groups, and actually turned around and paid the leaders of these very extremist groups, even utilizing the funds to have these groups facilitate the commission of state and federal crimes. That is illegal, and this is an ongoing investigation against all individuals involved. I don't have the numbers. I don't have numbers here, but I was listening to another show and they were going over some of the numbers. I mean, the head of the KKK, I believe, or someone, they just call them. It was like F-37, F-26, whatever. One person got $1 million, right? The main thing is here. To me, the SPLC is like they are like the Jesse Jacksons, and what's that other dimwit? The other race baiter, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. They just remind me of those two, right? Because they don't ever seem to go out and help their community or teach them how to be more independent. They just go out and they stir the race rage, right? They're just race. They seem seemingly race baiters, because if they came up with a solution, and instead of saying to these people, "Hey, you need to learn to be independent, stop being dependent on the government, um, build up your communities, improve your communities, learn to be entrepreneurs," you know, uh, do all these things and get your, unshackle yourselves from the federal government or any of these welfare programs or any of the dependencies you have on a government bureaucracy. They didn't do that. Uh, what they did was they just went around and stirred um, racial fires, right? And then wanted to keep people divided because if the people started getting along, fixed their communities and became entrepreneurs, became business owners, uh, bettered the education in those metropolitan areas, whatever, they wouldn't need the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons of the world anymore, right? Now, Vincent here says, what exactly are they going to be charged with? Will they go to jail or a resort at Martha's Vineyard? Are there going to be fines? Yeah, who knows at this point? Because the DOJ is handling this and the sway that the SPLC has had, I mean, let's face it. They target individuals all the time and they slander their names. They just, um, pardon me here, but they slander their names, probably led to people losing pages on social media, maybe YouTube channels. I don't know. I don't know the extent of their reach. I'm sure they were quite helpful in bringing just ruining people on the internet because they clearly have an agenda. Now, like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, if these charges here, if what the DOJ is saying is proven in a court of law, and there's no debating, right? The facts they bring are strong, in evidence, and I just don't know. I think maybe there'll be a scapegoat or two for the SPLC, but the people at the very top, I don't think we'll see anything significant happen to them because they, even though they're supposed to be probably some nonprofit organization, I guarantee you, between there are people in that organization tied very closely to, excuse me, people in the federal government. Those people will be protected. It'll be some scapegoats. Maybe somebody loses their job, or maybe they pay a small fine. Are they going to recoup all this money? No, because it's just like everything else, right? That when government comes in and we're going to catch these people. No, they know if they do this, if they really put the hammer down on this kind of thing, that other dominoes will fall, and maybe organizations that they tend to like will fall. I mean, to me, this is not going to happen, and I'll tell you why I don't have any faith in people. Like just stopping to donate money because you get this post from Jess Piper. I stand with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Well, okay, fine. I absolutely know what the political meanings of that is. It's because the Trump DOJ is going after the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they see it as strictly a political, campaign against this organization. Again, I am no friend of the SPLC. I want nothing to do with them. I don't want them getting a dime of any of my money ever because I don't trust them. And they've shown themselves to be like when you think of a woke lefty, right? You think the SPLC's behaviors kind of remind you of woke left, right? They're going to virtue signal. They're going to throw out the anti-Semitism name tag. They're going to throw out the homophobe name tag. They're going to throw out the racist name tag. And they're going to attack people who seemingly just want to be left alone and don't agree with the things that have been just kind of finding their way into the fabric of society. trying to normalize, normalizing things like transing kids, right? Um, Things like that, or speaking against the Israeli government, and there seems to be hold on our foreign policy. Again, they went after Tucker Carlson. People like that, they're going to hammer on. They think they're going to treat those people like the most evil people out there. They are just. It seems to me they are just a an organization filled with virtue signaling. Uh, the word woke's almost worn out, but it's true. Like woke, just virtue signalers. That's what they seem to be made up. And I'm sure at times, because a broken clock's always right twice a day, right? I'm sure on some, maybe a couple topics they've been good, but over the last several decades they've been horrible. It's just like the Anti-Defamation League. They just want to paint anybody who doesn't want to go along with the Israel first um, agenda to be anti-Semitic. It's the same playbook over and over again. It's just, and again, because generally most people, the majority of people are not racist. And so people are generally they're not going to want anybody, they're not going to want to associate, and they're not going to want people from like the Aryan Nation, the KKK operating in their town, stirring up shit. Basically, they're not going to want those people hanging around. That's normal. That's just you and I. We don't like racism. We don't want churches burned. We don't want crosses burned. We don't want minorities being beat up because they're a minority. None of us want that. And the more time goes on, the less that stuff happens. But they have to have these organizations they operate, and the only way they can operate and stay afloat is by continually spreading fear and fleecing people out of their money. It's like Vincent said in his comment. A self-serving group of race-baiting lunatics. That's a very good it's a very good description from Vincent here. But yeah, this is the only way they can stay in operation, right? They can't. I didn't leave that up on the screen very long. But they can't just keep going without perpetuating this idea that there are just racist groups everywhere, and they're hiding behind every bush, and we need the money to fight these organizations and these nasty people. We have to get rid of them. We have to do something about these people. If you preach a message, or if you push a message that says we don't we want to fix this, and it's a more positive spin, like, hey, we're literally trying to break these groups apart, we're trying to end racism, and you do it with a positive spin, you're not going to make as much money compared to, again, if this is true, if they were feeding money to these, especially the leaders of these organizations, getting them to organize and come together and put together some kind of protest or whatever, and they know all these news networks, especially cable news, is going to report on this in a 24-hour news cycle over and over and over again. People see that. They see the SPLC and their messaging. They're like, ooh, if I give money to those people, they're going to fight what we saw, right? And so they can't have a positive approach, and they can't have a positive message. It has to be negative. It has to be fiery. There has to be a lot of name calling. There has to be a lot of virtue signaling and woke language scattered throughout all their messaging on all their, whether it's advertisements or whatever. And because it works on people's emotions, and then they're going to throw even more money at it. And then the people donating are going to want to, they're counting on that the SPLC is going to continue to bring these groups to light so they can give the money to fight it. Well, the only way generally you're going to get this is if someone's funneling, someone's having to fund these groups in order to get them to organize and come together, whether they transport them to a city and do these things. The money's having to come from somewhere, right? Because maybe these people that are part of this organization, they don't have a lot of money, and they're not going to be able to go around and raise funds from the town to put these things together. So the money's coming from somewhere. And the people at the top, if they can keep fleecing money out of people, and they can keep the fires of this racist world we live in, supposedly, and keep those fires stoked, the money keeps coming. They get to live high on the hog, and they get to keep their jobs. If people would just stop donating the money, if we could just boycott, if the people would just go, you're not getting another cent from me until you've completely proven yourself innocent. And you can show us that these charges that have been brought against you are just unfounded claims, and you have a paper trail showing that none of this is true. I think the money from the people should just dry up. But then you get the Jess Pipers of the world, who say, I stand with them. Now that's and in the comments below, oh yes, me too, me too, me too. Guarantee you, if that was a right-leaning organization accused of the same thing, her Facebook page would be littered, absolutely littered, with claims that these racist people defrauded the MAGA crowd and ha 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 ha. Well, when the shoe's on the other foot, she's going to stick with them. That's and folks, this is on the left and the right. I'm just saying she's always a good example of how dumb people can be in this thing, right? How dumb and how absolutely programmed people are, that they can't bear to admit to themselves and others that people that they have actively backed or spoken out for or spoken up for, whatever, that these people are playing some kind of shell game, and they're just they've just been putting on a show and lying to them the whole time. They can't admit it. And so I talk to people sometimes about the left and the right. And I have said more than once to people, because the left now will come out and they'll be anti-war, or they'll be anti this or that. And I have told people, I get a little passionate. Sometimes I get a little worked up, but I said, no, those people should shut up. During COVID, they were absolutely fine with lockdowns and just ruining the livelihoods of thousands, tens of thousands of people, business owners, right? Ruin their business. Absolutely fine. Ukraine starts up. We gotta defeat Putin. New president comes in. They flip. There is no consistency there. And that's why I go after these people, and I go after the left, and I go after people on the right, social media, any chance I get, because if you're going to be against it at one time, you should be against it all the time. And I'm tired of seeing this inconsistency. So yes, when I see this crap and I see the inconsistencies, I call it out. Now, and it's one of the things, right? This show that Brandon and I do once a week, and sometimes again I get on and do my Friday rant. This show's probably never going to be super popular. Because I don't come on here to suck up to a particular political party. If they're doing wrong, we're going to call them out every time. And so, I can't, it's hard to build a podcast when you're not having people on and you're just a particular party on all and just sucking up to them and not calling them out on anything. It's hard to do that. And that's fine because I want to be consistent. I want the people who really want to be free and really want true liberty. I want that consistency there. It's something I've had to work on a lot over the last 15, 20 years as I've gone through this change in my state of mind on how I look at things and how I judge things. I expect that same consistency, especially from these influencers, and you're not going to get it, right? People like Jess Piper, they're being invited to speak all over and convincing people to run against Republicans because the Republican Party is seen as weak right now. And listen, that is on the Republican Party. That is not on people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Those people are responsible for losing elections because they've shown themselves to be spineless and weak, and they won't speak out. They won't demand better. They'll vote for big government policies, whatever. But the Jess Pipers of the world are living high on the hog right now. And so just like the SPLC and just like the ADL and a lot of these other organizations and the Jesse Jacksons and the other people, she has to keep this facade up too because she's getting to go around and talk. And I'm sure she's getting paid for some of these speaking engagements, right? It's possible. I don't know that for sure. That's just a theory. She's probably getting paid for some of them, and that's fine. Whatever. I'm not going to judge her for that because a lot of people get paid to speak at conferences, or whatever. Perfectly fine, right? But we shouldn't let folks like her slide through. If we have a rebuttal to bad messaging, let that rebuttal be grounded in liberty, let it be grounded in facts, let it be grounded in logic, not simply cheerleading for the other side of the political aisle, the other head of the snake, if you will. Vincent says slavery isn't whips and chains, but rather the dollar, status, and positions that are held in, say, the corporate world. To hold one accountable on their merits and value sets a tone of freedom for individuals. Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Okay, that's enough. But yeah, I just want to see consistency across any political party, and that is very, very hard to do, especially when you're talking about Republicans and Democrats. And sometimes libertarians can't even be consistent. Especially when you're beholden to the people at the top, like the Republicans in this state seemingly are, the Democrats definitely are. They're captured by the people who run the respective parties. They have things they want them to get done. And by God, they're going to get stuck on it. They're going to get stuck on it. Sometimes it sounds like someone sends out an email. Here's your talking points. Say these things in press conferences. Don't stray away from that messaging. Don't think too much for yourself and construct something better. Maybe you might ad lib a little bit, but you're not just going to come out and fully say what's on your mind. And that drives me nuts. If Jess Piper ever made it closer to me to talk, I would probably show up just to hear her message, make notes, and then just go perusing through media and all these other things and just see how much the messaging is consistent with what the Democrats and the progressives and the media personalities are saying and doing. And I bet you'll see a lot of similarities there. She doesn't seem to be one to really be able to think for herself either. The only thing that I've seen lately that I agree with her on is calling out even Democrats if they've been accused of like sexual harassment or anything to do with the Epstein files, that they need to go. That's literally it. Just about everything else, I can't see eye to eye with her because it just drives me nuts. But yeah, again, all I want is some consistency from any of these people who are constantly flooding their Facebook page or their X accounts, X pages or their feeds, and they're just constantly pumping out horrible messaging. Now, I have to play this because I believe this Heather Overstreet is now on 97.1, I believe, one of these big, Patriot radio stations. Yeah. Opinions and thoughts out there. How many others are willing to come on the net on a Friday night when most people are partying? This is your therapy and release. Yeah, it definitely is my therapy and stress release. So let me share this page. Now, I'm sure if you live in Missouri, you've heard all about the income tax elimination, HJRs that left the House. They're to the governor's desk to be signed to go on the ballot in November. We've all probably heard about this income tax elimination, but I want to share this video because this kind of crap drives me nuts. Let me make sure. Okay, we've got audio. Let me blow the screen up here, make it bigger. Come on. So this is one of the new radio personalities on 97.1, that very patriotic, seemingly Trump cucks. But here's 2 minutes of this, whatever this is.
So I need to tell y'all real quick about this phone call that I had with a lobbyist, and I'm going to leave her name out of it, but the people need to know about this phone call. So in Missouri, we have this controversial bill where we're trying to lower our taxes, but there's propaganda out there that's like, nope, they're actually going to raise your taxes, which is obviously a lie. So this lobbyist wanted to debate me on my show, and long story short, so I'm having a civil conversation with this woman until she starts telling me all these reasons why she's against the bill, and I politely interject, and I'm like, hey, I disagree with all those points, and here's why. And one of her points was that if this bill passes, it's actually going to raise our taxes, to which I said that's not true. She then proceeds to put me down for my age, saying that she's been around longer, she has more experience than me, and she knows more than me. I move past the comment, and then I ask her what company she works for and why her company is against the bill. And she says that her company is against the bill because when the bill passes, they do not know what's going to happen and nobody can make guarantees. And I said, but I thought you was against the bill because if it passes, you're claiming that it will raise taxes, and that contradicts itself. And I chuckled a little bit, and she says, no, it's not that, and starts going off on all these random other tangents, like other politics that are not related to the bill, whatever. And I just kind of let her talk, and she starts working herself up, and it gets to the point where she's raising her voice at me. I have to say her name 3 times for her to stop raising her voice at me. And she stops talking, and I said, look, this is starting to get heated. I don't want it to get heated. I said we disagree on many things. And you know something, guys, I should mention at the beginning of this conversation, she's explaining her beliefs to me, unprovoked. I didn't even ask. And she's like, I'm just about as far right as you can be. Or I was, and now I'm a little different, whatever. Who describes themselves as far right? Who? Like, as people that are actually right, like me, Republican, conservative, we all know what far right is, and it ain't good. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't know where she came from. I don't know why she's telling the citizens that they should not want taxes lowered. And I ended up telling her, I said, look, good luck on your endeavors, but this ain't going to work for my show.
So there's that. And when she's like, well, that's not true. They've admitted they don't have a plan. They've admitted they don't know what taxes are going to take an increase, like taxes on services, sales tax may go up. So she flat out lied right there. They have admitted that they don't have a full plan. They have 3 years that the Hancock Amendment will be shut down. Basically, it will not be in effect in the Constitution of the state of Missouri to allow them to sit there and fiddle with things. But I have not heard of one, and if anybody out there that sees this show later has seen a layout of the plan of what they're going to do, share it with me. Send me a link, do something. Because I'm telling you, they've pretty much admitted that there's nothing concrete right now. There's nothing concrete right now. It is they have to disembowel, or that's not the right word. That's probably a little hyperbolic, but they have to just say the Hancock Amendment is not there for 3 years. And we, as citizens of Missouri, are supposed to put our full faith and trust in these people to get this done and not have an increase in taxes somewhere else. Now, Darren Chappell was on Facebook the other day and said there are people out there saying this could take years, and that's not true. They don't know. They have to hit certain things in order for the income tax to tick down. There's all these things in motion. You don't, you, it, the federal government's actions, how much money they decide to print, what things they decide to do could affect the economy. So when you're having to deal with a central banking system, and then you propose this plan in a state and say this is how it's going to go down and it won't take that long, you can't say that. Logically, you can't say that because the state doesn't have its own economy. Hell, over half our state budget comes from federal dollars, right? So you have that. And then depending on an economic plan or whatever the feds decide to do over the next however many years, you can't sit here and tell me that those taxes are going to get eliminated in a short period of time. You can't. And to say so otherwise is misleading and deceptive in my opinion. I generally agree a lot with Darren Chappell. He's got some good takes on stuff. I think he's dead wrong on this. And this Heather Overstreet is dead wrong. And I mean, I hate to say it, but good Lord, she sounds like a typical, like a 97.1 typical radio host. Just kissing Republican butt. And it's like, you got people out there like that are going to get on the radio and try to convince their audience that there's absolutely nothing wrong with these HJRs. And I'm sorry, that's BS. Here is the problem in a nutshell. We have a government in this state of Missouri. We have a majority Republican government that wants to eliminate the income tax and no real plan to cut the budget. Because to me, if you're like, oh, we're going to lose this much money in income tax, we have to cut that much from the bill. Now, at some point, I'm going to have to dig in because a couple of weeks ago on a show, one of the viewers put in the comments that there are $2 billion in redundancy in the education budget. If that's true, and you could take that $2 billion, like we got $2 billion redundancy, cut $2 billion out. Then you could say, okay, whatever people would pay into that $2 billion, we'll cut that off the income tax rate for everyone. Everyone gets an income tax cut that will be equal to that $2 billion because we just cut $2 billion out of the budget. And then let's say you go through and you find another couple billion. Great. Lower the tax rate to that. And eventually, if you get the budget in line, you can eliminate the income tax and, you'll have your sales tax or whatever to continue funding things. But if they're not willing to do that, I can't depend on them. If the party of smaller government and fiscal responsibility can't shrink the budget, spend wisely, why would I trust that same body to fix the income tax and lower my taxes? I'm sorry, you can't spend money responsibly. So why would I see you be responsible enough to do this income tax cut and get it done where we actually get a tax decrease and it's done responsibly? That but they don't do that in this state. They don't do that in this state. I want to just because I want to pull this quote up that I quoted on the show Tuesday night because it with this type of behavior, it's going to take me a while to find it too, isn't it? Of course it is, because here we go. If the natural tendencies of mankind are so bad that it is not safe to permit people to be free, how is it that the tendencies of government are always good? Do they not also belong to the human race? Are they made of a finer clay than the rest of mankind? Again, that's a Frederick Bastiat quote. That is an outstanding quote. I love that quote. There's so much meaning to that. Those few sentences that he wrote out. So much meaning. Because again, if you listen to enough politicians, we can't be trusted to be truly free. We just can't, we as human beings just can't be trusted to have that much freedom. But you can trust us to set these guardrails in place that humanity, you as citizens of the United States, will have to guide yourselves through and make sure. And let me tell you, we'll make sure you stay in between the guide rails, because if you didn't, if you don't, we got a lot of guns that we can point at you and force you back in between those guardrails that we set up. We're going to put you in this box and you just stay in that box and you shut up. Now, why is it that we should listen to those people? Why? And again, why are those people held uh, to like some deity like uh, presence? Like they are a deity of some kind, and they're so much smarter than us, and so much, they're so all knowing, and they're only there to do good things. I mean, why are we trusting that? If it's, again, if you can't trust everyday people with their freedom, and those people from that same, same area, why do we why do I have to I'll just automatically trust them? Why are people, again, it's a lot of programming here, but how is it that people have not snapped out of this and said, why am I listening to them? Why can't I just run I think more people out there than we think sometimes want to just be left alone. But the problem is they also don't want to go the other way and push back at all. They don't want to say the things, they don't want to do anything. They just want to stay between the guardrails because they feel relatively safe there. And if they just do what the politicians tell them to do, then there won't be any problems. And that's just a horrible way to live. And we've got to get beyond that. So again, I just wanted to play that video from Heather Overstreet because again, I was not impressed with the intellect. Now, I will give her this: if you're some kind of lobbyist and you call a person on the phone, if what she said is factual, if you call someone on the phone and you diss them about their age and they haven't been around as long, you're not going to win people over with that. If you can't keep your emotions in check when you're calling around and trying to change people's minds about and educate them on something, you cannot come down on them about their age or their lack of experience or knowledge. No, if you can't bring facts with you to change the minds, then don't do it. Now, some people will fall for that because they don't know how to think for themselves. But some people out there, yes, they may still be a party cuck, but they still have the ability to use their brain a little bit. There's just enough dissidence in their minds to fight back a little bit. You can't call people like that on the phone, let your emotions get the best of you, and then talk smack or just degrade them. No, if you can't keep a calm, civilized voice and talk it out, you have no business calling people and trying, because you know what you do? You do that to enough people and you push them the other direction. And you're like, you know what? I am going to vote yes now. So there are people, I'm not saying there's a lot of people, but there are people out there like that. They will 100% just to spite you go the other direction. We see that in politics all the time. If you remember, I had Sherry Kutencooler on here years ago, and she literally knew of people on the Senate floor that voted no against somebody else's bill because they didn't like the color of their tie. And she's like, that sounds like a joke. She's like, I've literally heard it, and it's true. So, again, those people in those buildings can be so petty that it's not even funny. And why should we why should I put my trust in people who act that way? Again, there's a couple people up there in Jefferson City that I trust quite a bit. And that those two are Mike Moon and Bryant Wolfen. Why? Because they seem to want to put the effort in all the time to try to do what's right, and they try to do things constitutionally. And so those are the type of people that I am going to back. Those are the types of people that I'm going to get behind and I'm going to support. And if someone else comes in, they get hired, if they get elected in and they have that same drive, I will help them in whatever way I can. I will make sure that people know who they are and the good things they're doing and try to help them get reelected. Maybe term out in the House or the Senate as someone who's going to literally, take the time to read the Constitution, understand it. And if they have questions, they're going to ask someone like Tom March to help guide them through it, who has a great understanding of that document. That's what we're looking for. So I wanted to play a couple of other clips. There was this Hasan Piker interview with the New York Times, and Hasan Piker, I guess he's big in the liberal, as a liberal podcaster, but he had some takes on this interview, and I'm just like, I'm not real sure about this guy. Let me play this first one. Excuse me. I've got two different clips here, but let me play this first one because holy smokes. All right. I'm going to blow this up and we'll play this clip.
Engels wrote about the concept of social murder. And Brian Thompson, as the United Healthcare CEO, was engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder, the systematized forms of violence, the structural violence of poverty, the for-profit paywalled system of healthcare in this country. And the consequences of that are tremendous amounts of pain, tremendous amounts of violence, tremendous amounts of deaths. And that was a fascinating story for me because Americans are very draconian about crime and punishment. They're very black and white on this issue. And yet, because of the pervasive pain that the private healthcare system had created for the average American, I saw so many people immediately understand why this death had taken place.
Okay, so the systemic murder, or this is some of those clips where you're just like, excuse me. And again, people like Hasan Piker and these two gals from the New York Times, they look really intelligent. They look like they were drooling all over themselves as he was saying these things. Like they couldn't agree more. They weren't coming out and saying it, but they're smiling. They're just like, But it's so easy. I'm not saying that billionaires in this country don't have to take some blame. Their actions, some of these billionaires' actions are pretty awful, right? But when it comes to the healthcare system, the blame goes to the insurance companies or the hospitals. Guess who it doesn't go to, right? It doesn't go to the government. Who do you think wrote the ACA? And what group of people allowed people from insurance companies to come in and help write the legislation? The ACA, the one that Nancy Pelosi said you had to pass it to know what's in it. So did all this stuff just fall out of the sky, and these billionaires or these heads of these CEOs and stuff of these health insurance companies just suddenly gain a monopoly all on their own? Not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that the government and the insurance companies wrote legislation and monopolized healthcare and also raised the costs for everybody in the meantime. But it's straight to the CEO of United Healthcare. Those people are the problem. That's it. You just have to go. If we just go and kill enough of these people, apparently we'll fix it because of the systemic pain that they've caused in the murder, the deaths. It's not that the healthcare has been captured by governments, pharmaceutical companies who have no real interest, seemingly, in a cure, just a band aid to keep you on pills the rest of your life if you have a severe enough disease. It's just the insurance company's fault. Sure. I mean, if you want to say retarded things, that's a retarded thing to say. That is a naive and very ignorant take on, and it doesn't matter if it's the automobile industry, the airline industry, health insurance, any of these things. They've been captured so much by government, taking bailout money, whatever they've done. They're captured. They're compromised. And, every time the government gives them more money, well, there's always strings attached to federal money. You're not just going to get it free and clear, like, here you go, take it. No, especially if they're bailing companies out, there's going to be strings attached to that money. Government's not just going to hand you money without some repercussions. It's just not the way it works. It never really has. Well, people see, and people might be like, what about the CARES Act, the stimulus checks? There's consequences tied to that check that we all got. And you know what that is? Inflation. They devalued our currency. For a quick dopamine hit of a check coming in the mail. Yeah, Vincent, I did say the R word. Retarded. So when government just hands you money, if they have to start the printing press, and every dollar that's printed has interest tied to it that the Federal Reserve will recoup from your paycheck, and if they flood the market with enough of those bills, they devalue the currency. So there is a repercussion for a stimmy check. Okay? That's just the facts. It's an automatic function of the type of economic system that we are in right now. It is an automatic function. You flood the market with currency, you devalue the currency. And the inflation's transient. Before they printed this money, they were like, hey, we're cool. There's inflation's transient, no big deal. Still stuck with it. So people have to get around and wrap their heads around the fact that if government money, the federal government sending you a check in the mail comes with consequences. If they send a check to every man and woman and certain children, and it's to the tune of $3 or $4 trillion, all dumped into the market at one time or into the economy at one time, there will be repercussions for that. And it's called, you have less money to save. You have to spend more on everything. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day at work, and they're like, well, the interest rate's super high right now. I'm like, yeah. You know why it is? Because the Fed's like, we have to raise the interest rate so people stop borrowing money to have even more inflation. And then the Donald Trumps of the world think it should be back down to 2%. Not when you have that much money floating around in the economy. You have to get those dollars pulled back out before you can start to drop the interest rate. And it seems like a lot of people just um, can't come to grips with that. And this is what you get when when you're living with a central bank. Nothing good comes of it. This is another clip from Hasan Piker. Sounds like something you'd hear on Peaky Blinders. Oh, hey, Piker. All right, let me see this. Pull this up. All right, expand the video out. Here's another horrifying thing from let me back this all the way up so we can start from the beginning and hear the wise words of Hasan Piker on stealing.
Would you steal from Whole Foods?
You want to go first? Well,
right, guys?
I'm pro stealing from big corporations because they steal quite a bit more from their own workers. However, one thing that might even help your ethical dilemma is the fact that the automated process that they design, these companies know will increase shrink, right? So it's actually factored in. The lemons that you stole are factored into the bottom line of these mega corporations regardless, and they still end up having increased profit margins because they no longer have to pay the cashiers that they used to hire, as opposed to this automated system, knowing full well that people are still going to be able to still steal a lot more efficiently, as a matter of fact, through the automated process.
Totally. Well, I was looking things like, and shrinkage is roughly equal internally as externally. Like, they expect it from their employees that they are sort of disenfranchising constantly.
Yeah.
But what about the argument that if everyone just starts stealing wantonly from these self-checkout machines, Whole Foods will eventually raise the prices?
Yeah, chaos, full chaos. Let's go. I mean, look, I'm in favor. I'm in favor of fast and free buses and also government-owned storefronts. And two of those policies, the mayor of this beautiful city is currently working on.
Would you encourage stealing in the same way from a Mamdani-run city-owned grocery store with lower prices? And why?
I would not, because I feel like that's taxpayer funded, and the prices are this union labor, and the prices are also adjusted regardless.
Oh, wow. I feel so much more intelligent after that one. Everyone should feel more intelligent after what he just said. Everyone should be like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm actually smarter for hearing that guy talk. He would steal from big corporations, and some of his logic as well. They keep putting these automated, like self-checkout things in. You know what I've seen in some Walmarts and stuff that I go into? There's been so much theft and people not scanning items that they've actually removed some of the self-checkout and went back to more cashiers. You could possibly see that. And no corporation, if the theft is enough, they'll either close it down or they'll put everything behind glass. Remember, like the Walgreens and stuff of the world? You can't buy a toothbrush. You can't buy a stick of deodorant. You can't buy simple things. They're all locked up. You have to get somebody to help you get them out. They will find a workaround. Again, you had these cities up around Chicago and other areas. They were closing Walgreens. They were closing Walmarts. They were like, nope, we're done, because there was so much theft. And then it didn't seem like the cops or anybody or the mayors and the city aldermen and stuff were too worried about it. The only thing I worried about it is when they closed it down and then those people were racist or greedy, because God forbid you run a business, you have to make a profit to keep that business open. And if people are stealing from you left and right and you're not getting paid for half the stuff that walks out the door, I'm not going to stay open. It doesn't matter if it's a white neighborhood, a black neighborhood. They don't need that. It doesn't matter what color of skin the majority of the people living there are. What matters is if half your profit's walking out the door because people are stealing left and right and no one seems to be too interested in it, you're going to You're going to lock that place down and go, all right, bye. And then I don't know. It's just, it's the logic here is astounding. And of course, well, I won't steal from a government owned supermarket. And he wants more government owned things because, again, he doesn't understand economics at all. He cannot fathom how the economy works at all. And I am no economic major. I am not an expert on the economy. But I understand enough to know that okay, so for instance, I believe the grocery store that Mom Donnie's trying to build is $25 million and something. It's just, you know, and where does that money come from? It comes from the taxpayers. They act like they're getting cheaper groceries. If your taxes go up to fund their grocery store, people will get fooled and think, well, the bread and milk's cheaper at this government-owned grocery store. Yeah. You're also paying on the backside for those groceries. You just don't see it. It's not as visible to you when you scan the items or whatever and you walk out and your grocery bill's cheaper. It's not registering in some of these people's pea brains that their taxes, I mean, the taxes in New York are ridiculous. And they can't grasp that they're still paying for those groceries. They're paying it through taxation or inflation, so it's less visible to them. They can't break it down in their heads for some reason. So it's ridiculous. It's sad. Again, everybody wants the Pikers of the world want to blame everything on greedy CEOs. But okay, dude, fine. Then you come up with the capital and you start your own grocery store. Grocery stores normally run on about a 3% profit margin because they can't inflate their prices way up or nobody comes in. They have to keep people coming in. So 3, maybe 4% at the most, a profit margin on a grocery store. And people like, these grocery store owners are getting rich. If you just got a single grocery store somewhere and you're running it, you're not making a huge profit margin and you're not living high on the hog. That's just the way it is. You have to keep people coming in. I mean, I guess you could be like a Whole Foods and everything's expensive in there because you think you're buying all organic and it's a bougie little place to go into. You might pay higher prices there, but everybody that walks in there is willing to pay those prices. But if you're more of a germane little general like grocery store that's maybe it's not part of a chain and you just open up a grocery store, you're not going to charge what Whole Foods charges. You're going to try to stop below that. You still got to generate a profit so you can pay your workers and do all that stuff. But you're not going out there trying to get 20% profit margins on a grocery store. You'll go under, more than likely. So he just doesn't understand how the economy works at all. Great for you to have Colin Sorhus on to discuss finances. He's a genius on time. Maybe I'll have to look into that. All right. Because of that Hasan Piker comments, I want to play this clip from Milton Friedman when he was on Phil Donahue's show several years back. Okay, we are going to start at the beginning here because Phil Donahue is going to ask Milton Friedman about greed. And Milton Friedman, although I don't agree with, he's pretty good on economics and capitalism. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's pretty solid. And his arguments here are very solid. So let me play this for you.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear, that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that.
And again, that's so well put. People think that only in a capitalist society will you have greed. But think of it this way. People who generally want these communists that don't believe in private property, they think that's greed. If you don't think that through your hard work and perseverance, if you think that other people through their hard work, because mostly communists aren't working very hard, they think everything should be handed to them, right? So if you are of the mind that says that guy over there has a house and 2 cars and he shouldn't be able to have that, that's greed. You know why? Because that person wants a chunk of what you worked for, just as well as the government does. The government wants a chunk of everything you work for, whether it's taxation directly from your paycheck or taxing you because you have the ability to own things. That you're fortunate enough to have maybe a pickup and a boat and a UTV and a house and some property that you somehow deserve to be taxed on that. That's not capitalism, by the way. That's government greed. So they can keep operating their inefficient and very costly system that they've built over the years by brainwashing the masses. So these people, these communists, or these people who don't believe in private property are greedy as well. And I'm trying to think of the word here, but they're very covetous people. I think it's out of jealousy that they don't have the drive. They don't have the mental willpower to work towards a goal. That it's laziness and jealousy and envy and greed that they think that they're owed something just for being born on this earth. That anybody that has built a company is just the enemy. And it's like, well, you didn't build it. What if this guy comes up with a new product, gets the capital together, does all the things to do, builds a business, employs people, and then some of these people who love to talk about how greedy everyone else is walking around with $400 worth of clothes, a big iPad or an iPhone, all this tech. They might have $1,000, $1,500 on their person with their clothes and any items that they hold. That person's greedy. Well, if that person didn't have his own self-interest to produce a good that seemingly a lot of people want, if he didn't do that, you wouldn't have that phone. There's a chance that you wouldn't have that phone. These people think that the government would have come along and said, everyone needs a cell phone. Get on it. No, other people, because government does not have an understanding. Again, he said, where are these angels who are going to organize society into some well-oiled machine? Where are those people at? Because all these people running for government, they always want to talk about their business owners so they understand how government should run. Well, government is not supposed to operate for as a for-profit entity. Government's main purpose from the beginning was to protect your liberties. Those liberties and freedoms and rights enumerated into the Constitution that are naturally occurring. That's government's job. Not to say we need this many phones and this many of that and this many of that to keep all no. Now, the government does give out phones. Yes, we had the Obama phones and other things out. That's right. Tom is right there. But government doesn't have a factory somewhere producing iPhones or Samsung phones or whatever brand out there. They're not the producers. They just have their dirty, greedy pecker skinners stuck in and stealing from the producers and the people who work on the floor to make these products. Now, iPhones and stuff and all that stuff's made in China, but good evening to everyone. We got Tom in here now and Agorizer. Thanks for dropping in. It just is. And again, people talk about capitalism today. We don't live in a free capitalist market. We are dealing with crony capitalism, public-private partnerships, getting together, figuring out a way to screw you out of something, or to get rid of their competition, whatever. So we don't live in a capitalist society. Now, if I have something to sell you and you have the money to buy it, that's a capitalist thing, right? Because I give you a product and you give me money in return. And I'm not charging you taxes. I'm not regulating on the use of that. Whatever you do with it, that's your baby because you bought it, right? You bought it, you own it now. But man, if you go anywhere, if you go to a store, there's a government hand stuck right in there, wanting some tax money, wanting some revenue from that transaction. Tom says, I'm performing capitalism while I listen. Well, there you go. I am not. I'm just sitting on here flapping my gums and, as Vincent said earlier, doing my stress relief program. But yeah, it is amazing to see how blinded people still are when it comes to wealth and property and everything else. He's not the only person I've heard say that. I've had someone else tell me if they knew someone was stealing from a Walmart, they wouldn't care. If they were stealing from a mom and pop business, they would care, because the mom and pop business doesn't generate the type of revenue that the Walmarts and Targets and other places of the world can. And I don't agree with stealing from either one, because it's not yours until you buy it. That's just there's a transaction there. And if you think those things, because it's in a corporate store, that those things automatically belong to you, and you just think I don't get it. I don't. And then again, you think you can go into a corporate store because they have insurance. You heard the audio clips from people. Well, it doesn't matter because they have insurance to cover all that. Or they go out of business. And then you're going to complain that they left the neighborhood because of rate. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. And if you get a good percentage of people who have that train of thought that says, I can steal from this group of people, you can't have a free society like that. You can't have You can't expect to have capitalism in place. Now, those people that are doing it generally don't agree with capitalism anyway. But if they do it enough and stores start closing and moving away from their area, what are they going to do then? If they have limited choices in the market, they have to depend. What happens if you drive all these people out and the only thing that's left is government stores? You know that the products aren't going to get there on time. Your taxes are going to go up in order for them to be able to keep supplying people in that area with the groceries. The prices will probably go up. A lot of things will happen, but you're in no way proposing an idea that pushes forward and elevates people that are living in poverty. And then this a while ago, the American people are it's very black and white. Yes, if you steal from someone, that is a crime. That is theft. You stole property that belongs to someone else. That's a crime. That's black and white. That's so black and white. Now, if you flip it and the government takes money out of your check every week via theft, that is also a crime. It's just they've legalized the theft for themselves, and theft for us is still very unlawful. It's just they've legalized theft for themselves. And so you're like, oh, cool. That's how this works. So yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is, right? They have a legalized form of theft, and our type of the theft that if someone chose to do it, that's very illegal. You can't do that. If you're the Southern Poverty Law Center, you can create this boogeyman and keep funding these organizations that you say you're fighting against to get more and more and more donations. That's also kind of theft, because you're operating under false pretenses and you're defrauding people of money because they think you're actually trying to fight and take these organizations out, and you're actually backdoor funneling money to them to keep them in operation. So you continue to have a boogeyman that you continue to get more and more money from hardworking people to fight the enemy that you're funding. It's a very circular thing. They did a bang up job. And if all these charges are absolutely true, and this is proven, I just, it's one of those things where I want to see Jess Piper's reaction if they're found guilty in court of wire fraud. Because I guarantee you, after that, I'm staying with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Good luck with that. Again, as I said earlier on the show, I am tired, absolutely sick and tired. Again, listen, I don't want people, I don't want to come off as, and trying to come off as like being super intelligent guy. I am not that intelligent. Anybody that's had enough conversations with me knows that I'm not that smart, right? But it doesn't change the fact that I don't want to be lectured to by people who cannot be consistent in their messaging. You don't get to come at me and lecture me about how I'm wrong about things when you can't even be consistent in your belief systems. I can say that I'm much more consistent than they'll ever think about being. And I refuse to be lectured to by people who are beholden to a certain political ideology with no thought, with no real thought, without taking the time to think things through and just instead spew these stupid names at me and your just absolute falsehoods at me. I don't have time for that. Yeah, Tom says, you mean like you mean certain lobbying organizations like MRL and Mr. Dorr? Yeah, yeah. Aaron Dorr. Yeah, what is it? Missouri Firearms Coalition. He's same thing. I should have mentioned him earlier. He'll come out and tell you about Democrat bills that are going to come through and take away your gun rights. And those bills don't make it out of committee. They don't even get read in on the floor or anything. They don't make it anywhere. But he has to create these demons and these boogeymen. So you keep donating to his organization and you keep him well funded, and he probably gets to live a pretty decent life. And he keeps coming because he's not wrong. Every legislative session, there are people that put out bad gun bills, especially from the Democrat Party, sometimes the Republican Party. He's not wrong on that, right? Every year, those people are writing pieces of legislation and submitting them to try to get them passed into law, signed by the governor, passed. They don't go anywhere. They die. As soon as they hit, they're like, what? No, I have no interest in that. Aaron Dorr wants you to believe that those bills are creeping through, and you have to be smarter than that. You can go to legiscan.com and you can go to click on Missouri, and you know the bill number that he's talking about. You can type it in and you can see where it's at in the process. And 99% of the time, it's probably not even third read and passed. It'll say submitted or whatever it is, and it'll give you the language. But you look for the steps and they're not making it to third read and passed. So if you're going to have people like him, and I think Tom's meaning MRL, Missouri Right to Life. Pretty sure that's what he's talking about. If I'm wrong, I'm sure he will correct me in the comments. But yeah, these organizations are on the left and they're on the right. This is not just a leftist approach of creating a boogeyman to get more funding so they can keep going to the bank. And this just reminds me again of 2024, the governor's elections. And when I talk about these people being captured by the heads of the parties, right? Governor's elections talking about China buying farmland and China's enemy and China this and China that. They were parroting the same thing that was being put out at the national level in these congressional races or the presidential race or whatever. They're parroting the same exact thing. Illegal immigrants in China, China, China. That's all you freaking heard. They've been captured. We got way more to worry about in this state than China. Like getting rid of the income tax, leaving a 3-year window to create new taxes and shift stuff around with no real plan before it gets started. That's why you got to give them 3 years. And Heather Overstreet, again, way off base, right? She's like, that's just a lie. There's a plan. Really? Where is the plan? I have yet to hear this grandiose plan. And again, Darren Chappell swears up and down, it won't take a long time to phase out the income tax. Not if you give the state of Missouri 3 years to fiddle with stuff. And these seemingly majority big government Republicans may not take them 3 years. But there's no plan. There's no plan. So Heather Overstreet, wrong. Jess Piper, dumb as ever. Hasan Piker, commie. And yeah, that's just the way it is, folks. That's my 2 cents for the week. I feel a little better. I got this stuff off my chest and talked about some of the issues. So anyway, I think we'll wrap it up here. Appreciate all of you who joined in on the live chat tonight. Again, so Michael Murphy will be joining Brandon and I this Tuesday. He is running for president of Cook County Board. I think it's Northern Cook County, as seemingly a libertarian guy. So he's got a tough row to hoe there. And then don't forget, the following week on Monday, we'll be joined by Mr. Spike Cohen from youarethepower.net. If you've never checked out that organization, I ask that you go to their website and see the battles that they're waging right now and see the things that they are fighting against and trying to right the wrongs. This is a phenomenal organization. Speaking of phenomenal organizations, we'll follow that Spike Cohen interview up on Tuesday. On Tuesday night, we'll follow that up with another great organization, and a gentleman by the name of Tom Martz from the Lock and Smith Foundation. He'll join us on Tuesday night to talk about more retarded Missouri things. Maybe some national news at that, too. Who knows what we'll cover when Tom comes on, because we just go all over the place and we enjoy it while it happens. But anyway, that's going to do it for this Friday's edition. We've already done this week's edition of the Missouri Liberty Report with Brandon. This Friday's rant of the Missouri Liberty Report. And again, to all of those of you who are watching this now, or those of you who happen upon it later, because I'm not recording audio to put out in the podcast side of things, the audio side. But anyway, I appreciate your continued viewership and appreciate the heck out of you. And again, don't forget Tuesday, Michael Murphy, and then the following week, 2 nights, Monday night and Tuesday night, both starting at 6:30 with some mighty fine guests. And with that, I bid you adieu. I hope you all have a great weekend. I myself am going to go out and try to do a little wildlife photography tomorrow, see what kind of images I can capture. And then I will see you right back here on Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report.